At 4:37 on the morning of September 12, 1944, the hedgerows of northern France were silent, but for the distant rumble of artillery. Mist clung to the low-lying fields, shrouding the rows of oak and beech trees that had been transformed into a natural fortress by retreating German forces. The 3rd Infantry Division had been tasked with breaching this labyrinth of defenses, and Corporal Lewis Grant, 25 years old, a machinist from Ohio turned soldier, crouched behind a fallen tree, peering through the fog at the lines of enemy fire. He could hear it before he saw it, the staccato roar of the MG-42, precise and deadly, ripping through the hedgerow, pinning his squad to the muddy ground. Men were down. Screams and shouts punctuated the relentless rattle, and in that instant, Lewis knew that conventional tactics would not save them. His squad had been moving cautiously for hours, weaving between the towering hedges and bramble when the first burst struck. The enemy had anticipated the Americans' approach, and every move forward invited a hailstorm of bullets. Sergeant Miller, a battle-hardened veteran, had shouted orders, but even his voice was nearly lost amid the storm. Half the squad was wounded or immobilized, and the remaining men huddled, their eyes wide with fear. Lewis could see the desperation etched on their faces, the way they glanced at each other, weighing risk against hope. Somewhere behind him, a comrade whispered a prayer. Lewis's eyes didn't leave the hedgerow. He scanned the wreckage, calculating, always calculating. He was no stranger to danger. Before the war, he had worked in a machinist shop, shaping metal, welding pieces together, building tools, fixing things that others deemed impossible. Now, those skills were not just useful, they were life-saving. He had already scavenged broken firearms from abandoned depots and fallen soldiers, and he had a plan forming in his mind, one that seemed impossible, but was perhaps the only chance his squad had. He crawled low, mud and dew soaking his uniform, and slipped behind the remains of a shattered shed just beyond the immediate line of fire. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wet wood and oil. Scattered on the floor were broken Browning M1919 parts, a Thompson with a cracked stock, and various scraps of steel, nuts, and bolts. Lewis dropped to his knees, fingers trembling not with fear but with adrenaline. He surveyed the pieces. If he could combine them, reinforce the frame, attach dual barrels, and create a functional firing mechanism, he might just have a weapon capable of turning the tide. Minutes stretched into hours as he worked feverishly. Sparks flew as he welded metal, attaching the barrels side by side. He fashioned a crude but sturdy mount, improvising triggers and reinforcing weak points with whatever scraps were at hand. He worked under the faint light of dawn, ignoring the rain that seeped through the roof, running down his face and soaking his hands. Each connection had to be perfect. One flaw, and the weapon would explode in his hands, or worse, fail when his squad needed it most. A young private peeked through a crack in the shed. "Corporal, what are you doing?" he asked, voice quivering. Lewis didn't look up. "If I don't make it, someone else will need this. If it works, maybe we survive," he replied. The private didn't understand, couldn't yet grasp the vision that Lewis held in his mind. The twin barrels sat side by side now, gleaming wet steel. Every inch had been tested, every weld inspected. He loaded 2 magazines, each with 30 rounds, and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the weapon in his hands. It was heavy, awkward, but capable. As the first rays of sun pierced the mist, Lewis emerged from the shed, the twin-barrel makeshift gun cradled in his arms. He moved with precision, low and deliberate, approaching the hedgerow where the rest of the squad was pinned. The enemy fire intensified as he neared, bullets striking wood and earth around him, kicking up mud. The soldiers' faces were a mixture of terror and awe as they watched him. "He actually built that thing himself," one whispered. Lewis crouched behind a fallen tree, sighting down the dual barrels. The MG-42 nest was only 50 yards away, concealed behind thick hedgerow and sandbags. He fired the first shot. Both barrels roared in unison. The German gunners were caught off guard, thrown into confusion by the unexpected hail of bullets. Sandbags erupted in showers of dirt and splinters. The suppression allowed the squad to crawl forward inch by inch toward a position of safety. Time lost all meaning as Lewis continued his methodical assault. Every burst from the twin barrels was deliberate, calculated to maximize impact while minimizing exposure. He moved from cover to cover, dragging wounded men along, firing bursts that neutralized threats in the hedgerow. By midday, 2 MG nests had been silenced, and the squad had secured a critical section of terrain. Soldiers who had moments before been frozen in fear were now moving with renewed purpose, inspired by the sheer ingenuity and courage of one man. Lewis knew the danger was far from over. The Germans were adapting, repositioning, flanking. He adjusted the firing angle, anticipating the enemy's next move. Another squad leader, bleeding from a shoulder wound, shouted for help. Without hesitation, Lewis sprinted under a hail of bullets, twin barrels spitting fire. He reached the man, dragging him behind cover while simultaneously suppressing enemy positions. Every round he fired bought another precious second, another chance for survival. Hours passed in a blur of adrenaline and blood. Lewis was relentless, firing, reloading, improvising on the spot. The twin-barrel weapon, a marvel of desperate engineering, had become an extension of himself. Each pull of the trigger was precise, each movement deliberate. The squad advanced, inching toward the objective, their confidence rebuilt, their morale restored. When command arrived later that day, the officers were initially skeptical. They inspected the weapon, frowning at its crude construction, questioning its safety and legality. Lewis explained simply that it had saved lives. "Isn't that what matters?" he asked. Reluctantly, they permitted him to continue using it in field operations, recognizing that in this war, resourcefulness was just as valuable as discipline. Over the following days, Lewis's twin-barrel gun became legendary within his unit. Every operation, every skirmish, the weapon was there, a symbol of American ingenuity and determination. He trained other soldiers in its use, forming small teams capable of suppressive fire that could turn the tide of engagements against heavily fortified German positions. His bravery inspired others to innovate, to adapt, to fight with creativity as well as courage. During a particularly fierce counterattack, Lewis held the flank alone, covering the retreat of his squad. German infantry advanced in waves, machine guns tearing through the underbrush. Lewis fired relentlessly, the twin barrels roaring like a mechanical beast, his every movement calculated to maximize firepower and minimize exposure. He was hit, a bullet tearing through his shoulder, but he continued, ensuring that every soldier under his command reached safety. The squad carried him off the field, battered but alive, his weapon still functional, a testament to human ingenuity under fire. Louis Grant's actions did more than just save lives. They changed the course of the battle in that sector of Normandy. Commanders recognized his heroism, soldiers revered his bravery, and the twin-barrel makeshift gun became a symbol of the relentless spirit of the American soldier. His story was told and retold, a legend forged in the mud, blood, and fire of one of the most brutal campaigns of World War II. Months later, after the war had moved across France and into Germany, the twin-barrel gun, battered and scarred, remained a testament to the courage and creativity of one man. Louis Grant returned home, forever marked by the battlefields he had survived, the comrades he had saved, and the weapon that had allowed him to defy death and conventional tactics.